Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada for Reason to Resist on July 17th, 2025. Today, we're pleased to be joined again by our comrades from BettBeat Media, Karim Batash and Peter Beatty. Karim is an assistant professor for the Faculty of Social Science at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He specializes in cultural, political, and social psychology. Peter is also an assistant professor in the Masters of Global Political Economy program at the same university, Chinese University of Hong Kong, and his research focuses on the role of ideas and information in political economy. Friends, thank you for joining us again today on Reason to Resist.
My pleasure.
Thank you for inviting us.
So it's hard to imagine two people who are more capable and qualified than yourselves to weigh in on what we're going to discuss today. And the focus of our discussion, I would like to be on the extraordinary backlash to the Trump regime's decision not to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. And before we get into that backlash, I want to tell you and our audience about a poll that was conducted in the United States shortly before the Trump regime revealed that it would not publish the Epstein files. It was conducted in May by Quinnipiac University. The results were published in early June. And here is a report from the Times of Israel. The headline of this report is actually interesting because it focuses on the 14% drop in support for Israel among Republican voters. But what the really disastrous numbers from this poll are the drop in support amongst Democrats. So amongst Republicans, the new poll found that 64% say their sympathies lay with Israel, while 7% say they were with Palestinians. This actually was a 14% drop from last year. In a May 2024 Quinnipiac poll, Republican sympathy for Israel was at 78%. This would have been 8 months into the genocidal rampage on Gaza. That, by the way, the 78% was a 14% drop from the prior poll. The poll also found plummeting support for Israel among Democrats. As I indicated, that was the really disastrous result for Zionists. Just 12% said their sympathies lay more with Israel, while 60% said their sympathies lay more with Palestinians. Last year, 30% of Democrats said they sympathize more with Israelis. So that was an 18% drop from last year, May 2024. So I think what we can take away from this poll is that support for Israel really resides now, at least as of the time that this poll was taken, principally, overwhelmingly among Republicans. The Zionists appear to have lost the Democrats. Now, whether that'll be permanent, whether that'll result in meaningful changes in U.S. government policy remains to be seen. But certainly, without Republican support, Israel is in serious, serious trouble in the United States. So this brings me to the events of the last few weeks. After this poll was done, we learned from this hapless, hopeless, brainless Attorney General, Pam Bondi, that they were not going to release the Epstein files after all, even though she had said that the files were on her desk and seemed to say that the actual client list was on her desk. Now, apparently, it doesn't exist. And since then, as I know you know, gentlemen, major MAGA influencers have turned on Trump with a vengeance. One of them, of course, is Candace Owens. And I have to confess that before she turned on Trump, I had never watched a single minute of her videos. But having heard or learned from social media that she had undergone quite a transformation in terms of not only her support for Trump, but her views about Israel, I decided to begin watching them. And I want to show you a clip from a video that was published about 3 days ago. This clip had 1.7 million views as of a few hours ago. So here's, it's a little bit long, but I think it's worth watching.
The montage that was actually put together by Breakthrough News. It's good to do this just to remind ourselves that we're not going crazy on the topic of Epstein. Take a listen.
How is it that my father can be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light? I'm trying to figure out how that's possible, right, folks? It's almost like they're trying to protect those pedophiles for some reason. I can't imagine why, right?
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
In this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
I'm not ever going to let this story go because of what I heard from a source about Bill Clinton on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not letting it go ever. Ever.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
All of these people are in power now. All of these people could certainly release the quote unquote list. Is it exactly a list? Is it a network of contacts? Is it video footage of people that committed crimes against children? We don't know. And we may never know, which is leading some people to ask the question, like, is Trump actually in the Epstein files? And personally, my take on that is no. But what is your opinion? Because I can't reconcile this Donald Trump with the Trump that we're seeing right now, the Trump that is gaslighting the public right now, the Trump that I voted for across multiple elections. The Epstein scandal is definitely terminal cancer to Trump's MAGA movement. There's no question about that. I actually said to my husband this weekend, we were talking about it, that in order for Trump to get out of this is how bad it is, in order for him to actually make the MAGA base forget this, like potentially move on from Jeffrey Epstein, he would essentially have to come right out and repeal income tax in the United States. And then we would be extremely happy. Everyone would be very happy. And then we'd go, actually, thanks, Trump, but we still remember the Epstein scandal and we want the list. That's how bad it is. There's just no making anybody forget about this Epstein scandal. It's a major fumble. And I want to be very clear, Trump's team knows that. Everything they are doing right now indicates that they are in panic, a full-blown panic. And what I mean when I say Trump's team, I kind of mean the Zionists that are around Trump and have been kind of running everything behind the scenes.
The Zionists who are around Trump and have been running everything around the scenes. Wow. So coming from Candace Owens. And by the way, I just have to say, I'm going to ask you, Peter, to weigh in on this in just 1 second. But I have to say, when Trump referred to Epstein as a creep, I want to remind people that in 2002, he told New York Magazine that Epstein was a terrific guy and one of his best friends on God's green earth. And at that point in time, according to law enforcement authorities, that monster was molesting and trafficking girls, dozens, if not hundreds of girls, when Trump referred to him as a terrific guy. Now, Peter, I'll start with you because I know your time is limited. I think that this is sincere. And by the way, I could show you clips, I won't do it in the interest of time, of Tucker Carlson doing, just taking strips off of U.S. support for Israel. You can see a recent interview that he did with that ignoramus Ted Cruz, in which he strongly criticized the U.S. alliance, right? And there are others out there. My sense of this is that they are sincere and they are really angry. And I don't think they're going to forget this anytime soon. And I don't think they're going to be coerced by Israel into changing their views, even though, for example, Tucker Carlson was, threatened on social media basically by Naftali Bennett, the former Israeli PM who once bragged about how many Arabs he had killed. So do you think this is sincere? What do you make of this? And do you think that now they're about to lose the Republicans too?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that it's sincere. When Candace Owens said the only thing Trump could possibly do is eliminate income tax, I was thinking, no, actually, the only thing he could really do is start a war. But there's no PR campaign for that. They would really need like a major terrorist attack on the U.S., false flag or otherwise, it seems, to be able to justify a war, get people behind it, and then really distract attention from it. But it also reminds me of 2016. My reaction to Trump was that he was likely going to be the right's Obama, in that a lot of people would be really excited about him on the right, but once in office, in power, he would govern in a typical establishment manner and would disappoint the few people who actually pay attention. It's hard to see like what percentage of his base is really going to split with him over this. I have seen people on the other side. Someone on Twitter amazingly was saying, well, what if securing these files is what's required to preserve peace? Then I fully support these files never being released. So people are kind of dealing with cognitive dissonance in various ways. I would like to think that this is going to be something that really splits the right. And I'm almost a little embarrassed that, at least as of now, it seems like there are more people on the right realizing that they were suckered than there were people on the left realizing that they had been suckered by Obama. But still too early to tell.
And what's your take, Kareem? Do you think this is sincere? Do you think this is a real threat to the Israeli regime in terms of public support for Israel in the United States? And if so, why do you think this has touched such a chord, such a sensitive nerve with the MAGA movement?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still worried though. I'm still worried it will eventually die down. People will move on to something else. But let's hope that won't happen. I first wanted to say something about Candace Owens. Even though Candace Owens has said horrendous stuff back in the day, also about Hitler and that kind of stuff, I also never followed her. But in this case, I really must say she's very courageous. I'm genuinely wondering, and I don't know what you guys think, I'm genuinely wondering how she gets away with this. She has a huge platform, so she has influence, so that makes her a target. Plus, she's a black woman. I mean, she's even an easier target. There's nothing Zionists like more than attack people of color. These are their favorite targets. So I'm still wondering how Candace Owens gets away with this, because she is doing the anti-Zionist movement a big favor, I must say. She's millions of views, she has millions of subscribers, and she actually shines a light on the depravity of Zionism and the Israeli influence on the United States. Now, about why this is so important, the whole Epstein case. I'm happy it's important. I think Epstein, the whole Epstein case actually exposes the depravity of the ruling classes. I mean, if you hear about the people who visited Epstein, these are so many people, famous people, that you actually start to wonder who are the people who did not go to Epstein. I mean, this whole tendency to abuse and to exploit the most vulnerable of society seems to be a kind of almost a kind of red line, a kind of central phenomenon among those who have a lot of money and power. I mean, I remember Sima telling us in one of our interviews that he is of the East is a podcast. That's his channel, and he also called the kingdoms in West Asia, the Gulf kingdoms. He called that pedocracies. Why did he call it pedocracies? Because also there, among the capitalist ruling classes, pedophilia seems to be somehow one of the most popular sexual depravities. There's this linkage between capitalist power, the people who get into power, they are the ones who are best at exploiting us. So these are already very exploitative kind of human beings. And what is, of course, the ultimate form of exploitation? It's the abuse of innocent children. So I really think there's a psychological link between being very successful in very exploitative capitalist societies and the billionaires, and the need, the urge, the arousal of exploiting helpless young children. I really think there's a connection there. Now, why is it so important to also the right, maybe even more so the right? I would say, don't forget, we had Pizzagate, the whole idea of Pizzagate, that there was some kind of pedophilia conspiracy and whatever. Now you have a literal, true Pizzagate. I mean, Epstein is the true Pizzagate. And then you expect people to just forget about it? I don't think so. Pizzagate was a big thing on the right. Pizzagate was a big thing among conservatives. Now you have Epstein. That's the real Pizzagate. So I don't think people will let go. And I really hope people won't let go, because I kid you not, these powerful classes never get caught. They just never go to jail. They never get caught. They maybe pay a couple of $1 million, which is for them, like for us, 50 cents. And we had the same problem in the Netherlands. We had this kind of justice minister who was caught abusing little boys for all of his career, and everything. Lawyers tried everything. He just didn't get caught. He knew too many people in power. It just didn't happen. And before I talk too long, just one last thing I also want to say, and I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but have you noticed that when in the media they talk about Epstein, all these pundits always talk about young women? Oh, why did he abuse young women? These are not young women. These are children. They abused children. They did not abuse young women. Every time you hear that, young women, people need to really, really react to that, because that is a way to whitewash the crimes. Because young women, as a heterosexual man, it's very normal to like young women. I think young women are attractive too. So don't align me with pedophiles by saying young women. These are not young women. These are children. That's a very big difference. You know what I mean?
But they do the same thing in some of the coverage of Gaza. That they've said in major newspapers. They've twisted language in ways I wish I could remember. But it wasn't just like young woman or young man. It was something even more convoluted to describe someone who is like 8 or 9 years old. I think enraged they referred to using some sort of strange convoluted language, like a woman under the age of 18 or something, something absurd like that.
Correct. No. The 6-year-old young lady.
Right, exactly.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned Gaza, Peter, because I really want to put a finer point on my question here, as people understand. Of course, I'm in complete agreement that this is a gigantic scandal. This goes to the very heart of the supposedly democratic foundations of our society. If people in positions of power, people who are wealthy, can get away with molesting children, and if the compromat that has been acquired on them because of their nefarious habits is enabling, let's say, a foreign government like Israel to dictate how they govern, how they rule, this is just completely destroys any notion that we have any kind of a functioning democracy. So I completely agree. It's a massive story. It's scandalous beyond words. And just to emphasize what you said about this being children, I just watched an excellent interview that Chris Hedges did of Nick Bryant, who has spent years of his life investigating the Epstein scandal. And he confirmed, this man knows the subject as well as anybody, that some of these victims were as young as 11 and 12 years old. We're talking about little girls, okay? And there were hundreds, and I saw one estimate that the number of victims is in excess of 1,000. Okay, so This is a gigantic scandal. But to go back to what you were saying, Peter, until this blew up, a few weeks ago, the whole world had been watching Israel literally massacre tens of thousands of Palestinian children, starve them to death. There were babies that were dying because they couldn't access baby food. It was being withheld by the genocidal entity. There were children being shot in the head. There were children having amputations performed upon them without anesthetic because of this monstrous Israeli regime. But it did appear to erode significantly Republican support for Israel. But it seems that this has resonated to a far greater degree with the Republicans. We'll have to see what the polls show in the days ahead. But it seems that this particular scandal, why do you think that is? Is it just come down to the fact that the victims of the even worse scandal, I mean, children being mass murdered, were Palestinian? Is that what it comes down to? Or is there something else going on here, in your opinion?
I think it's simpler, and it goes to what Kareem was saying, and that is the media ecosystem in which Republicans and right-wingers inhabit. They have for, I guess, over a decade now been imbibing all of this false information about this pizza restaurant in D.C. where only Democratic politicians were engaged in pedophilia. And that became, part of the QAnon theories. And so this has been in their heads, something of concern for quite a while. And Epstein kind of slid in on the same angle that, that all the focus on their side was on Bill Clinton. And I don't know who else, but primarily Clinton, the very top of the Democratic Party implicated in this scandal. So it's been on their radar in a way that the genocide in Palestine is just not. Like if you watch Fox News in the US or check out the right-wing internet sites, influencers, etc., there are some that have been focusing on this, but it is very easy to go throughout your life and learn next to nothing about the genocide other than, the standard Israeli propaganda line that, they're just fighting Hamas and Hamas is always using human shields and whatnot. So whereas the genocide has been largely kept hidden from them in their media ecosystem, this Epstein scandal has been front and center primarily because I think the thought was that this would finally pin something on the Clintons, which, from my perspective would be great too. But they completely ignored all of the many indications that Trump was likely also implicated in it. And now that the rubber is hitting the road and they want the files to be released, now Trump, is doing all sorts of things like claiming that anything in which he, where his name appears is just a fake that was put there by the Clintons or the Obamas or Comey or what have you. So I think it just comes down to the simpler answer of it's been in their media ecosystem. It's been a meme that they've been focusing on. And now we're going to see some fireworks.
Yeah.
And if I may jump in for a moment, Dimitri.
Sure.
I also would like to take this opportunity to talk about. So we're talking now about those sexual abuses that happened of little children on Epstein's Island, probably more than 1,000. And I would like to take this opportunity also to shine a light on the abuse of Palestinian children and women and men. Now, when people talk about the sexual abuse, they always talk about that case that was on camera of that male. Male Palestinian who was raped on camera, but there have been UN reports after UN reports, and I've discussed them also on our Substack, BettBeat Substack, and I've linked to those UN reports for those who have the stomach to read it, of massive, systematic sexual abuse of Palestinian children, women, and men, where women and children are warehoused together in halls, okay? Naked warehoused together, tied up, blindfolded, where they are mass sexual abuse, not only by soldiers, but also by Israeli citizens. And what baffles me is the total lack of discussion of this within the pro-Palestinian discourse. I find this such a weird taboo on our side, while the Zionist side just keeps throwing false accusations of rape towards the Palestinian side, psychologically connecting rape with Palestinians. The only thing that the pro-Palestinian side does is refuting false rape claims. They will never go in the offense. They will never discuss the UN reports about the mass sexual abuse of Palestinian children. And tens of thousands of Palestinian children have disappeared. And they are not only under the rubble. I think we need to discuss this. I have sent, and I feel I need to say this, I've also emailed multiple times to Ali Abu Nima and his electronic intifada. Why? Because Ali Abu Nima once mentioned one of those UN reports. And he said, I have not read it yet. I need to read it first, then I want to discuss it. Mm-hmm. He never did. He discusses every time the rape hoax, accusations towards Palestinians, spends a whole hour on that, multiple hours, does not spend time on the mass sexual abuse of Palestinians by Israelis. I've emailed him multiple times. Some of my subscribers have emailed him, never got a response, somehow doesn't want to discuss it. Now, I don't only want to blame Ali Abu Nima on that. I want to say that the whole pro-Palestinian side discourse has this weird taboo of not talking. People will watch it. When people summarize the crimes, they will always say Palestinians are being bombed, murdered, sniped, tortured, but never almost never they will mention the rape and the massive sexual abuse. I think that needs way, way more attention.
Yeah.
Way more attention.
Yeah, it bears also pointing out that Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak are two people who are known to have been, let's say, extraordinarily friendly with Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't know of direct evidence implicating them in the molestation of children, but they were clearly very, very close. And I believe there was one other former Israeli PM in that list. They were extraordinarily close to Epstein at a time when he was mass molesting girls and trafficking them out to these
and
monsters.
Imagine stateless, nameless, rightless Palestinian orphans. Okay? I mean, seriously, I know it's very difficult to think about. It hurts me too. It really touches on the darkest side of humanity. But by not talking about it will not make it go away. It will make it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like, Kareem, sorry, we've had to bid farewell for now to our friend Peter. But we're going to continue the discussion. We have a lot more to chat about. I want to focus in on somebody whom you and I have discussed at various points over the past several months, Kareem, sometimes on air, sometimes in private conversations, who, well, I'm going to let his own, the evolution in his own words do the talking here. So the person I'm referring to is Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter is, of course, ubiquitous in the independent media. So very few people you'll see as often and hear from as often as Scott Ritter, particularly in what I call the AIM, the anti-imperialist media. And he's clearly a very influential figure. And, as I've said many times, I don't take any pleasure in criticizing people in the AIM. All of us share important objectives in common. But it's precisely because Ritter has so much influence, and some other people in the independent media has so much influence that, I think when they engage in advocacy that's questionable or worse, it's important for us to point that out. So I'm going to start with an article that Ritter wrote in Consortium News. And if you just bear with me, Kareem, I'm going to sort of take people through the evolution of this. This was an article published in November of 2024, right after Trump won the most recent election. Okay, and it's entitled, in case you want to find it, it's rather long. Tulsi Gabbard and the Trump Revolution. Okay, and so these are the highlights from the article that, in my view, and I'm quoting Scott Ritter. Trump's Make America Great Again mantra, when examined from a foreign and national security perspective, has several components. First and foremost, there is the notion of peace through strength, which implies a certain aggressiveness regarding America's global posture. This aggression, however, will be tempered by several factors. First and foremost is Trump's commitment to keep America out of wars. Oh, wow. That didn't age well. And he goes on, he says, this implies a reliance upon diplomacy over force. Then he says, add to this the reality of a weakened American military and the fact that even if Trump wanted to take his country to war, the military would more than likely not be up to the task. All this means Trump will be placing a priority on diplomatic solutions while the military rearms and reorganizes. And then he says, the focus of the article then turns to Tulsi Gabbard. He says she has earned the trust and confidence of the President-elect Trump, something that will serve her well as she becomes the conduit for the intelligence information that will guide the thinking of President Trump once he's sworn in. Gabbard is well positioned to become the most influential advisor to President Trump regarding the critical foreign policy and national security problems that will be faced by his administration. And finally, he says Trump's decisive electoral victory has given him a mandate to enact revolutionary changes in the way America's governed and interacts with the world. To be successful in this revolution, Trump needs fellow revolutionaries. Tulsi Gabbard is one such revolutionary, and her selection to be Trump's director of national intelligence when seen in this light was a stroke of genius. And he ends the article on that note. Kareem, why don't you start by telling us about Tulsi Gabbard, and also, and more importantly, what do you think, how do you think this assessment back in November 2024 stacks up against the actual evidence that has emerged about the Trump administration since then?
Yeah, what can I say? So I've again also on our Substack, I've written about Tulsi Gabbard already numerous times. Years, like literally years ago, myself, but also many other people, often in the more how can you say that the people from more marginalized communities, so to speak, let's say Muslim Americans, people of color, people from West Asia, have been warning about Tulsi Gabbard over and over and over again. And you and I, we did a show once, remember, it was called White Anti-Imperialism, and where we discussed a bit about that blind spot that you often see among white anti-imperialists. And that has nothing to do with just because you're white. Of course not. There are quite a few white people who actually do have a good lens, but being part of the more majority, more privileged group in the United States often comes with a kind of blind spot for certain kinds of issues. And what you often see with many of these white anti-imperialist channels is that they would ignore certain signs or not even see certain signs of certain kind of politicians. For example, you would see that people often would have very positive discussions about Viktor Orban in Hungary, or they would positively talk about the AfD in Germany, which is a very right-wing, almost Nazistic kind of party. But forget about that. They had some critical views on war with Russia, for example. And it's the same with Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard has been blatantly anti-Muslim for as long as I can remember. You just need, how can you say that in English? You must have the wish, the want. How can you say that? You just need to see it. Let's put it that way. You know, you must have the willingness to see it. She has always been supportive of the war on terror. Always been supportive of the war. The war on terror was, that was the holy grail of imperialism, man. That allowed the West to completely destroy West Asia and North Africa, the so-called Middle East in general. She's also been very supportive of drone wars, where most of the time innocent young men are just being shot like it's a video game. She has also been very, very, very cozy with the right-wing extremist Hindu fascist Narendra Modi. And she's on pictures with him and on parties and everything. Let's ignore it all. Let's ignore it all because she says she's against regime change wars. And that is stuff we kept saying. And even till now, when she was selected for the cabinet of Donald Trump, all these mostly white anti-imperialists came out of the woodwork and said, this is good news, this is great news. And I even saw a show of Judge Napolitano with his cousin, I think, what's his name, Gerald Celente, and they were discussing together. And I remember Napolitano say, I was happy when Tulsi Gabbard was selected into the team of Trump, but now I'm disgusted by her, because he realized she was not what she promised to be. If he would have listened to us, if he would have listened to others, then he would have already known. But if you go through his video list, all his guests are pretty much old white men from the United States, right-wingers most of the time, people he's a very free market kind of capitalist guy, so that of course also plays a role. But that there you show that a lack of diversity in guests has a tremendous influence on the way you see things. And I would say that Scott Ritter is also somebody who lacks certain kinds of understandings. That's also why a man like Scott Ritter back in the day said that he also he agreed with George Galloway to give up on the Arabs. Remember, so he gave up on the Arabs after the whole Syria debacle, and then lumping all Arabs together: Christians, non-Christians, Muslims, non-Muslims.
I just want to stop you there for a second. I'm going to put up on the screen. I think you're referring to this. I want people just to have a look at this.
Sure.
This was from December of last year. So this would have been shortly after. This is a Scott Ritter post on X shortly after Bashar al-Assad fell. I just want to read a couple of passages. I know you and I have had occasion to discuss this. He says, okay, let's get real. Palestinians have allowed themselves to be held hostage by Fatah and the PA. Allowed themselves. Like they
take.
So, how many of them have actually taken up arms against the PA over the years and who have been killed by the Palestinian Authority forces or, imprisoned and tortured by the Palestinian Authority? So they didn't allow themselves. Then he says the weakness of the PA helped create the conditions that facilitated the Abraham Accords. The weakness of the PA is entirely a function of Scott Ritter's government and its interference in the affairs of the Palestinian people. Then he says the only factions fighting to save Palestine were in Gaza. That's actually not true. There are factions fighting Palestinians inside the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, and in Lebanon, in Syria. And then he says to survive, they needed the axis of resistance, and now they cheer the demise of that which could save them. He's referring here to Bashar al-Assad. So tell me again how I'm wrong when I say the Palestinians are their own worst enemy. I could go on, but I mean, I was deeply disappointed, frankly angered by this post. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kareem, but that I think needed to be shared with our audience. And I'm really glad. I'm really glad, by the way, that you mentioned Viktor Orban. Okay, I got to be in my bonnet about Viktor Orban. I have heard every major AIM platform, anti-imperialist media platform, talk repeatedly about Viktor Orban. Probably no one has mentioned Viktor Orban more than the Duran. But he's often mentioned on Judging Freedom with Judge Napolitano. Sometimes I've heard him mentioned on some other major platforms, perhaps on Dialogue Works with Nima Al-Rashid. Viktor Orban, quite apart from all the other criticisms you could articulate about the guy, is fanatically pro-Israel. And in fact, after the ICC indicted Netanyahu, he invited, even though Hungary is a member of the International Criminal Court and had an obligation to arrest Netanyahu, he invited Netanyahu to Hungary, and Netanyahu accepted the invitation. So he basically just gave the ICC the big middle finger. And these platforms, this is what's remarkable to me, Kareem, they recognize that what Israel is doing is a genocide, right? But somehow they're able to compartmentalize Viktor Orban because, okay, with complete justification, he wants the Ukraine war to be brought to an end. Great, wonderful. But they're able to separate that from his support for a regime that they themselves recognize as committing genocide. What the hell's going on there, Kareem? Like, why can't these people understand that Viktor Orban is a monster? If you support Israel and you're willing to coddle the man who has been identified by the ICC as, a war criminal, I don't know how anybody could praise him. You're muted, Kareem.
Sorry.
That's okay.
As a social and cultural psychologist, I would assign this to unwitting. I'm not saying it's on purpose. I would assign this to unwitting racism. If you would fully see victims of imperialism, whether it's Palestinians, whether it's people in West Asia, as human beings, as important as human beings from where you are from, you would be so disturbed by what people like Viktor Orban do, or the AfD, or Tulsi Gabbard, that you would have noticed. But the fact that you can turn a blind eye to Tulsi Gabbard's really, really virulent anti-Islam, anti-Muslim kind of tendencies and support for the war on terror, because he says some other good things, it shows that compartmentalization is exactly that. It shows that you can push the plight of certain human beings away because you find the other stuff that influences you and your people maybe more important. And that's a kind of unwitting racism. Most racism is not conscious. I always keep emphasizing that. People always think like, oh, when you're a racist, when you say racist stuff and bad things about brown people, for example. No. Most of us, when asked, we are convinced we are not racist. But we have unwitting, culturally indoctrinated tendencies that make us racist without us realizing it. And when people tell us, when people say, hey, wait a minute, this is racist, we become angry. We become, no, this is how everything's racist. How do you call it? No, because we are often not aware of the things that are racist. And that brings me to what you just saw, that that tweet of Scott Ritter. That's why that's why you and I often call this white anti-imperialism. This has nothing to do, again, because this makes people so sensitive. Oh, I hear the word white. My mother is white. My sister is white. Most of my friends are white. I grew up with my mom, my white stepdad, my white mom, my white sister. Okay. I love my white family. Okay. I'm a mixture myself, but I love. So that has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what this identity does, the way you grow up, that you just don't see certain things. This is very important to understand. The identity of white has nothing to do with you personally. It's a colonial identity that has been created for us, and therefore we started to identify with it, and therefore it makes us angry when we discuss it. Please don't do it. It's not about you individually. So what I wanted to say is about that tweet by Scott Ritter. That's a form of white blindness. When he says Palestinians allowed themselves, he is literally saying, from the privilege of his American home, he's literally telling Palestinians who are suffering under the bombs and imperialism of our societies that they allowed themselves to suffer like that.
Yeah.
This is to me so incredibly disturbing and enraging. It's so distasteful because it shows a kind of Western white superiority where you are allowed to tell the Palestinians who suffer under your government's bombs that they allowed themselves, that they have allowed themselves to suffer like this. And you know what I would say to people like Ritter and many others is, no, we have allowed our government for hundreds of years in our so-called democracy where we select our governments. We have allowed our government for hundreds of years to destroy the rest of the world. There's almost not a society around the world where not millions have been killed by Western imperialism. So how dare we say, well, we cannot stop our governments in our so-called democracies. Well, how dare we say that those who suffer under our bombs and our imperialism, that they have asked for it themselves because of A, B, and C? I find it extremely distasteful.
Yeah. You know, the blindness you talk about is so important, because I have no doubt that Ritter knows. I mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't know that the last time his government and Israel allowed the Palestinians to hold an election, they did not vote Fatah into power. They voted for Hamas, the group who, in that tweet that we showed, Scott Ritter, implicitly praised. He said the only people who've been fighting for the Palestinians are in Gaza. Well, they won that election, and it was the United States government, with the full backing of Israel, that simply crushed the will of the Palestinian people and imposed upon them this tyrant, and have never allowed them to hold an election ever since. And yet he's saying, how does he must know these facts, these historical facts, and yet he's saying they allowed themselves to be ruled by Fatah? I mean, just absolutely, the blindness is remarkable for somebody who has the expansive knowledge that Scott Ritter does. He knows these facts. I'm sure he does. In any case, I just want to be fair to Scott, before we move off of this subject, I want to show people some of his more recent commentary. Apparently, this was from early May, and this was before the revelation that the Trump administration would not release the Epstein files. On an appearance on Judge Napolitano, Trump, I haven't actually watched this. Frankly, I've stopped watching Scott Ritter because I'm basically fed up with all of these
Yeah, me too. I never click on these videos anymore.
So I've not confirmed that this is in fact what he said, but somebody here, says, man, Scott's on fire. On Judge Knapp, he called Trump a liar, a fool, and that he needs to stand down, apparently calling for his resignation. And also he condemned Rubio. So hopefully Scott has learned from his erroneous, to put it mildly, assessment of the revolutionary Trump administration. Now, I'd like to move on to a completely different subject before we end our discussion today, Karim, and that is this extreme violence that Israel is now inflicting upon the people of Syria. Not that it ever stopped, but there seems to have been an escalation over the last few days, which I just can't really make sense of it. And I just want to start by showing people how severe this is. A little video I'm going to share with you of the bombing of Damascus.
قصف جديد يا شباب قصف جديد ما بنهيئة الأركان خالص قصف جديد يا شباب قصف خذونا بسرعة 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 قصف ثاني دمروه نعم قصف.
I don't know how that is for you, Dimitri. I find it hard to contain my rage when I see this stuff. It's really going completely out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, this is apparently they flattened the Ministry of Defense in broad daylight. Presumably, people were working at that time in the ministry. They also, and this is the part that is most mystifying to me. Okay, I guess I understand why they went after the Ministry of Defense, although Syria's army, for all intents and purposes, has been destroyed. So why you felt the need, these maniacs to just level the Ministry of Defense during business hours, just bewilders me. But they apparently attacked the presidential palace, and I thought that this terrorist who has taken a shave and wears a suit now, al-Jawlani, was a friend of Israel, and he certainly was behaving in many ways like a friend of Israel. So. What do you think is going on here, Karim? Why are they, now that Assad has been removed, I mean, I could go on and on with the evidence that has accumulated that Jawlani is a puppet of the United States. Okay. But still they seem to be, if not trying to assassinate him altogether, at least to destroy any chances he might have of consolidating his power. Why do you think they're doing this?
Yeah, why do they do this? I actually was trying to search. Oh yeah, I found it. I saw an interview yesterday that was very convincing with a man from Scandinavia, but he is, I think, of Palestinian origin, if I'm not mistaken. His name is Iyad el-Baghdadi, and he actually said something very important. He said, Zionism can only survive by constantly having enemies. And he said that if Zionism would not be Zionism if it would not be constantly at war, because if it would not be at war, it would mean the chance for other groups to rise up and maybe someday get equality, get an equal environment. That's not supposed to happen as long as Zionism is there. So he said Zionism needs to continuously bomb and attack. Oh, there is a group that's doing well. Bomb and attack. There's a group that's doing it. And it's going so completely out of hand right now that it's the only way to stop Zionism is to get rid of it. And as long as it doesn't happen, it's there. It will completely flatten every society around it endlessly, pretty much. And what you're seeing right now is so incredibly enraging, because we're talking about beautiful civilizations that are being destroyed. I mean, I know we in the West, we are so indoctrinated in our schools and our media that we hardly think these people are worth thinking about. But Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Iran, Libya back in the day. These are beautiful, beautiful countries and ancient civilization with human heritage. I'm not talking about regional heritage for these people. For our heritage, our human heritage, things that matter to us as human beings, thousands of years old, are just literally being bombed by some maniacs from 2025. We're talking about 1,000 years of history erased by a psychopath or multiple psychopaths born in the 20th century who are just wiping everything out. And when you see that, what frustrates me so much, and that brings us a little bit back to our previous discussion, Dimitri, we are so indoctrinated in the West for hundreds of years already to not see the humanity of those who fall outside of our European white ethnic group. All the rest of humanity is just less worth it. And that has resulted in us now accepting for hundreds of years the total destruction of multiple hundreds of millions of people around the world, and now also complete civilizations. What we see in Palestine is not just the destruction of a people, the suffering of an innocent, beautiful people. We're seeing the literally wiping out of a civilization. If you look at Gaza, the way it looks, it's total wiping out of civilization. But we had to spend years. We had to spend years commemorating 9/11. We had to spend months and months and months commemorating the 12 deaths in France during the Charlie Hebdo attack. But we see wiping out of complete civilizations in West Asia. People like you and me who are suffering thousands of 9/11s a day. And nobody even talks about it. Nobody even talks about what the Syrians are going through. Their little children kidnapped by depraved pedophiles and used as sex slaves. These poor people who are living there, these minority groups whose environment is destroyed, who have to flee the country and then flee to Western Europe, where they are treated as disgusting Muslims and dirty immigrants, and where they are left on boats because they are not worthy of saving from the sea. We are so rotten to the core in our societies with deep-rooted racism, we're not even aware of it. And I think what we're seeing now, when you show that video, it's not going to register, Dimitri. It's not going to register among people. I hate to say it.
You know, Kareem, I went to Damascus one time in my life. It was in 2023, just before the genocide began. I was in Lebanon, and I managed to get into the country for one day. And I was given a tour of central Damascus, and I was almost moved to tears by the beauty of this place. I had no idea how ancient and how fundamentally important it was to all the major religions, and the architecture, the culture, the food, the people. There were such wonderful people that I encountered on that day. It was a very memorable day for me, and I've always considered myself to be relatively well-traveled, and I had no idea that Damascus was really a treasure for all of humanity. And to see this happening is enraging. As you say, it's absolutely enraging. And one other thing I want to add to that is I had a similar experience when in May of last year, I went for the very first time in my life to Baghdad. Somebody who was an official who was associated with a resistance group took me down a street. And I'm not talking about a little street. I think it was like 500 meters long. And it was nothing but bookstores, not, selling crass commercial stuff that you're going to find in major American or Canadian bookstores. But these were books that were being crafted by hand, ancient texts. And all along that street, as we walked down it, I'd never seen anything like that anywhere in the West. I could see bullet holes in the walls from the Iraq War. Some of the bookstores had been completely demolished, and they still had not been reconstructed by suicide bombers. It just boggles the mind how we in many ways, Western civilization doesn't hold a candle to these civilizations. And we look upon the destruction of these ancient cities as a trifle. It's just unbelievable. The only other thing I want to add, maybe just you can weigh in on this, Kareem. One thought I had, who knows what's in the mind of these psychopathic lunatics in the Israeli military and government, but I read a report that, there's been a lot of talk about this regime. I don't know where this stands now, normalizing with Israel, with the al-Jolani regime normalizing with Israel. And in that context, I saw a report that al-Jolani was suggesting to the Israelis that they had to give back 1/3 of the Golan Heights, which they have illegally occupied. That was his starting position in a negotiation about normalization. So he was ready to cede 2/3 of the Golan Heights, and undoubtedly, if the Israelis would give up any of it, they probably would give up less than a third. But I think this might have been a message to him: we're not giving you an inch. How dare you? How dare you demand that we give back any part of the Golan Heights? Not only are we going to take the Golan Heights that we annexed back in the 80s, but we're going to take the land that we have conquered since the fall of Assad. Do you think there might be something behind that? You think that was a very loud and clear message that they will make no concessions?
Personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I have no facts to back it up. Personally, I don't think so. Personally, I think al-Jolani is totally in bed with the imperialists. I mean, they are his golden ticket to power. I mean, I cannot believe that a weakling like Jolani would go against Israel or the United States while they are the reason why he got into power. No, he's an asset. He's part of them. And everything you hear in public, oh, Jolani says this, Jolani says... It's the same as everything you hear in public about, oh, Trump and Netanyahu are in a fight and Trump and Netanyahu disagree. Everything they admit in public is for us. It's not true. If they have a disagreement, they would do it over the phone and we would not hear about it. If you hear it in public, it's for us. It's not true. And as long as Trump sends the bombs to Netanyahu, there's nothing going on between them. And the whole thing with al-Jolani, no. I think al-Jolani is just a part of the club, the imperialist club. He's a low-level foot soldier of Netanyahu, Trump, and the whole gang. And why Netanyahu the whole Israel, the whole imperialist gang is bombing Syria? I think I have no idea. I think there must be some reason. Maybe trying to rile up ethnic tensions. I have no idea. Maybe try to put fear into people. But I know they're addicted. They're addicted to war. They're addicted to killing. They're addicted to murdering Arabs. They're addicted to or people in West Asia in general. Also Persians, of course. But there's something. Okay, let's be honest. Israel is a deeply sick society with sick mindsets, sick tendencies, and it's really a kind of virus that has been implemented in West Asia, and it doesn't work. It destroys everything that lives over there. It destroys all these beautiful civilizations where people lived in harmony, Muslims, Christians, you name it, different ethnic groups, and it's putting Israel there with thanks to the British and European colonists. We have so much more. We have so much more guilt. We should have so much more guilt for the crap that we have done around the world. I mean, I live in Asia, and if you see all the ethnic tensions over here and all the shit that's going on, you can all trace it back to European colonialism. And man, I don't know, man, but I think there is only a very violent way is going to be the way to get rid of Zionism in West Asia. I see no other solution. The West is never going to change.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm hoping that these polls that we talked about at the outset are the beginning of a sea change in American public opinion, and that the American people will finally pull the plug on the U.S. government's boundless support for the genocidal entity. But like you, Karim, I don't think we can count on that. I think we have to use every tool in the toolkit to bring this genocide to an end as rapidly as possible. And, I would not contest for 1 second that the axis of resistance is making an enormous contribution at great sacrifice to the termination of this awful genocide. In any case, comrade, thank you very much for joining us again on Reason to Resist, and I look forward to our next conversation.
My pleasure, my friend.
And we're signing off from Montreal, Canada. And I take it you're in Hong Kong, Kareem?
Yes.
Yes. On July 17th, 2025. Peace out.